Welcome everybody to the channel. Don't need to say who I am now. It's Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator. But I'll still say it because it trips off the tongue. Right, you've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title. We're back on with uPVC spraying. Now, I'll be honest, I wanted to do this video a good couple of months ago. I've had this paint in my studio for a while, and let's just put it, typical UK, British weather, England, it's been pants. I've not been able to do it. We've got a lot better day today. We've got nice warm temperatures, so we've not got a drop in temperature for making paint cold. So I thought I'd get on with this and let's review this paint, because this paint is something I bought off Amazon. And I'm going to say bought off Amazon because, as I've said times many, I'm not sponsored by anybody. My reviews on paint come from the heart. Let's get some graphics there. Come from the heart, and I review paints for you so I can give you an idea what a paint's like before you try it, or whether you're going to try it after the review or not. So this paint off Amazon, a litre tin. You may have heard of this company before, PaintNuts. They're quite a big paint manufacturer in the automotive industry, manufacturing paints for car spraying and bits and pieces like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody knows any more than I do. I have actually spoke to Simon at PaintNuts, know a little bit about the company, and this is a product that they're trying to take out into the big wide world of uPVC spraying. So I thought I'd try this paint and give you my honest thoughts on what it's like. Now, always read the instructions, always scan the QR code on the back. Knowledge is king. If you already know what the product's supposed to be doing before you try it, you're halfway there. But I'm going to be honest, I found a flaw straight away. Found a flaw. Oof, terrible. I'll be speaking to Simon. The instructions need changing straight away. Now, I open this tin. After reading the instructions, it says, give a good shake up, mix for 2 minutes. I've got my mixing stick. Got my mixing stick there. I've mixed it all up because clearly I'm going to be spraying. Now, I've mixed it all up. It seems really thick in the tin. It stinks. Now, it says on the back of the tin to wash your brushes out, because this is a product that you can actually brush and roll on your uPVC. We'll come on to that in a minute. It says wash with white spirit. Now, with the smell of this, it smelled very cellulosey. It smelled like you were walking into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory and it was making pear drops. If you did chemistry at school, you know what I mean. It smells that sort of smell. It smells like you've got a packet of sweets opened that are pear drops and you're sucking on them. So first things first, I thought that is not a white spirit based thinner for this. And I've experimented. I got the brush out that had mixed and wiped down there. This is just a cheap Aldi brush. The Deco brushes you've seen me review, wiped it down, and I tried to wash that brush out with white spirit. Nope. It was like trying to wash out an oil brush in water, literally. So I have got cellulose thinners here, and I swapped across to cellulose thinners, and you know what? The brush all of a sudden washed out. So we know that the thinner for this is not white spirit. It is gun cleaner stroke cellulose thinner. We're happy with that. Right, off the back of that, before I started getting the spray gun out, and I've got a Qt5, you know that, I've seen videos there, Qt5, brilliant for spraying uPVC. You can see I've had a little bit of a sample spray there, so I know it's going to react. First things, I'm knocking paint over. I'll come back to that. I've got some samples of uPVC. This is an anthracite wrapped one. And I thought what I'd do is try this paint straight out the tin with a brush, and literally it is a cheap brush. I've taped up the edges because ideally you don't want to be putting this paint on the rubber edges. So I've taped up all the edges, you can probably see that. And I've brushed that one coat. Do you know what? It's fantastic, one coat. No smell from it when it's drying. It does say leave at least 15 minutes between coats. Now that is over the anthracite and that is nearly covered for one. Can you see that? It's nearly covered for one. That's been done probably about 20 minutes now. I want to do this video talking to you, and in between I'm going to give it a second coat. It is, well, it's dry. That's good, it's dry. So I'm going to be at least half an hour to an hour before it has a second coat. But do you know what? That brushed has gone on lovely. I don't want to do a scratch test on it, and realistically, do we go around scratching windows once they're painted? We don't. I would say give that 7 days before you start trying to do any scratch test to it, but I'm not going to do a scratch test on that. I'm going to leave that because that is really, really nice. So thumbs up on the brushing of that on a anthracite wrap window. And you know, I've said about cleaning down of uPVC before. If you haven't got any special cleaners, methylated spirits is really good. Wash it down with soapy water, sugary soap water. If you've got that, clean it down, dry it, final wipe over with methylated spirit. Job should be a good one. Give a little bit of a nib down with something to take the sheen off, take the gloss, take the shine off the surface, just to scratch it up. Don't put a scratch on it that actually makes it scratched into the surface. All you want to do is just knock off that, you know, can you see it a bit shiny? You just want to buff it off. So I've got Scotch-Brite pads like these, I'll just reach out, like that, just to take that highlighted sheen off the surface, just to dull it up. That's really the word, dull it up. Get that a bit dull, clean it down. A final wipe over with a methylated spirit cloth, or if you have got cellulose cleaners and thinners, use that. There's no need to be going over with a tack lag, because that's got a sticky, varnishy sort of drying element to it. You don't want to contaminate what you've done. So going over with some cellulose thinners, you can get that quite easily from paint shops, body shops, even decorating centres. Cellulose thinners or some methylated spirit, just so it evaporates away, and then you've got a clean surface to paint, and that one coat, brilliant. We'll come back to that later. Right, Qt5 HVLP. I've experimented. I use this paint neat with the Qt5 with a 1.8 needle, because that needle, that paint seemed very thick. So the larger the number on the orifice, the 1.8, the more paint can go through. So I thought, let's try it neat with a 1.8, which is quite wide. I can open it out, let a bit more paint through if I require, and have an experiment with the needle and also the airflow. And you know where the airflow knob is, let's call it a knob. That is on the closest part to, can you see that? Closest part to the actual gun handle. You can regulate how much air is coming through, because HVLP is like a glorified hairdryer. It's pumping a load of warm air through it, and you can regulate your airflow from that valve there. You regulate your paint needle flow through there. The more you tighten it in, the less paint will come through. The more you dial it out, the more paint will actually be thrown out the tip of the needle. But that is a 1.8, so the orifice, which is the hole, is quite big. If I was spraying Colour Bond, the original Colour Bond, I'd be on a 1.5. This is a 1.8, like I would be spraying something like All Coat Exterior, which is a water-based product. But today, this I'm going to say PaintNuts. This PaintNuts paint for uPVC, I've gone with a 1.8. That can be dialed down to put less on. I can also open it up to put more on. I'm not a moron, you know. Yeah, anyway, we're 10 minutes in. Let's carry on, Phil. Right, I tried it straight out. Opened up the needle to put more paint on, and I was getting, if I can say, it was like Halloween. It wasn't atomizing well. I'd got little strands of, if I can pick them up, they're in the air. I might be even covered in it. You can see, yeah, look at that. It was going like a spray spider's web. So that put alarm bells ringing to me, thinking, do I need to thin it? So after the experimenting with white spirit and cellulose thinners, I've actually thinned the paint down by a good 10%. And I would even say you could even possibly go 10 to 15%. Experiment. Don't just take my word for it and go 1.5 needle, 1.8 needle or a 1.5. Phil said 15%. Try it 10%, go a little bit more if you're not happy with it. But I've experimented on my Cortex sheet there. Once I'd got that paint thin enough, it went through that lovely. I could control the fan pattern from like a spot to a wide fan a lot better. I could actually dial it in to control how much paint I was putting on, and I could also dial it out to allow a bit more paint. Now, you're going to say airflow. How have I found it? Do you know what? Just put it on full. Get the atomization there. If you're on full, you feel it's a little bit too much, you can always crank it down. But I've tried it on there, not so full, if that's a word, not so full, and I just thought it was a little bit splattery. And those that know will understand what I mean. Those that don't, I'm going to say to you, turn it up, get more airflow through, get the atomization at the ram horns at the end, because it atomizes at the end. Once I turn that airflow up, got a nice flow of paint coming through, the actual paint was laying down pretty good. It didn't look splattery, it didn't look pimply. So I think I'm ready to go with that. It's a little bit trial and error, but this is what we're here for. I'm trying it. So far, so good. I'm happy how it brushes. I'm experimenting on there. I'm also happy with. Now, moving forward, you've seen previous videos where I've been showing you how to clean down uPVC. Please watch uPVC cleaning down and also taping up. This is the same window. Now, it's been a number of weeks since I've done it, since you've probably seen the videos, and I've got it here. And the whole purpose of me doing those videos was to get it ready for spraying with this paint, which I have done. Now, the only difference that I've done since the original video is, put that down, is actually go round and tape up the rubber edges, because this paint, when I spoke to Simon at PaintNuts, he says not really ideal for going onto the rubber edges. So I have just gone down with some, well, it's actually the purple Q1 tape. Yeah, probably be better with something a little bit more stickier than that, but I'm just doing experimenting. It doesn't really matter. I've put the tape round to protect the rubbers. As out of interest, I'm going to leave the rubber on that side just to see what it's like, which is it's not like a rubber gasket, it's more of a bit of a plastic. But I just want to see what this paint's like over a uPVC window. Now, this is an old uPVC window. I've got a little bit of cellulose cleaner just on there. I'll just get any last little bit off that I might see. We're not looking at painting this as a professional standard, like doing somebody's house. I just want to see how it lays down. But we're going to treat it like we normally do when we do uPVC. We're going to put a fine mist coat over that first to lay down. And you're going to say, why do you put a finer mist coat on first, Phil? Mainly, put a finer mist coat on because if there is an issue with the uPVC, there might be contamination on the surface. If you put a fine coat on, you will see that contamination coming through, either sissing or marking, like somebody's got grease on it. If you can do that at the early stage and correct it, jobs are good. If you've put too thick a coat on straight away, you're not going to be able to adjust and alter. You're not going to be able to rectify a problem because you've put too much on all in one go. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn my machine on. I'm just going to do a little bit of a practice there to make sure I've got a dialed in mist effect going to go on that window. Forgive me, I'm not going to be able to paint that underside because we are using it on the bench, but I just want to see what mainly the face is like. I will go down the edges, across the top, left, right, and then we'll do the main filling. But for now, let's just see what it goes on like as a mist coat. Then we'll come back to it in a few 15, 20 minutes, do another coat, and I would probably finish with a third coat. We'll see what it's like with a coat over the mist coat, but I'd probably feel happier giving a mist and two top coats. So I'm going to go and get the machine turned on I've already got my mask ready. People are asking me what mask I've got. It's a Sunstrom SR100. It has a pre-filter on it. It's got a particle filter which is there, and that filter is actually a gas filter. So when I talk about the smells of the paint, with that gas filter, it takes those smells out and it actually makes it quite fresh air to breathe. So that setup there might be about 100 quid, might not be as much as that. These filters you change when they're ready to be changed. There's no set period of time. It depends how much paint spraying you're doing. But clearly that pre-filter on the end is swapped every job, i.e. every day. The pre-filter goes on top of the main particle filter. That gets swapped. Well, I probably do it every year. And the same with the gas filter behind it. So let's go and get the machine turned on and see how we go. I'm not sure whether you can hear me. You might be hearing me because I've got the mic on underneath. Right, I've dialed it into a fine mist coat. What all I'm going to do is go up the sides, across the top. Smell. Literally, that's all I need to do. It looks very patchy, it looks very mottled. Unfortunately, my studio is not a dust-free environment. I've actually activated all the cobwebby dust in the air, but that has gone on fine. I'm happy with that. It's just a mist coat, like a wash coat. I'm going to give that 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to go outside and just put another coat on that for now, and I will come back to this to give it a thicker coat for a first full coat, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know, you could probably see, it was probably hard to say, to see on the actual video. I'm only spraying with probably 1.5 to 2 inch sort of spray fan pattern on something like that. If I was on a bigger job and I was using a bit more paint, I wouldn't be using the pot underneath, the suction pot. I would actually be using the remote pot that holds more paint. That gives me then more maneuverability with the gun to go up, down, left, right, side to side. But for this purpose of this quick, well, it is not a quick video because we're going really in depth with it, but for the purpose of just doing a sample window like that, I'm just using the suction pot underneath. But stage 5 HVLP, it's a godsend, I'm going to say. So see you in a bit. I'll be about 20 minutes. Right, we're going in again. We're going to give it a first of the top coat. So I'm going to dial it out so there's a bit more paint being put on. I'm still on the full flow of the air. The needle width, the fan pattern, I'm quite happy with. But what I would say is keep that paint moving, keep it shook up. When you've let it stand, come back to it, shake it back up so it doesn't settle. That's dried nicely. You feel it a little bit textured because obviously you've got a mottled effect. That will go once you start building up your paint over the top. See, I'm back. That first coat's gone on. It's, I'd say, a little bit texture. Don't think it's like mass texture. You can just see a little bit of pimpling. Now, what I'm going to... Dead fly. What I'm going to do is just open up the needle slightly now to pour a little bit more paint on, and we'll go for a final coat on that and see what it's like. Drying, it's dried within about 5 minutes, to be honest. I'm leaving it about 20 minutes to half an hour before I'm coming back to give a second or third coat. But so far, so good. That's not looking bad at all. As I've said, this isn't a posh job. It's only a sample window that I've got. And I think for the purpose of this final bit of a video, I won't put my mask on. I'll do it, hold my breath, so forgive me for that. So I can just talk through what I'm doing when I'm spraying it. I said to you before, make sure you keep that stirred up, keep it moving, and you should be good. It's not going to settle. But what I'm going to do now is just open up that needle a little bit more. Practice on my practice board sheet here, which where I have practiced, it actually flows out really nicely. You can see down here where I've done it, flowed out really nicely. I'd actually say to you is, if you are getting pimpling because you've not thinned it enough, don't be frightened to add a little bit more cellulose thinner to your paint mix. Mix it up, blast it through. You've only got a short pipe there to move the older paint. Blast it through till you know that the newer paint's coming through, and then just give it that final coat with a little bit thinner. Get it on wet and it should level out. Now, I'm not getting any runs with this. It's actually gone on quite nicely, but I do feel at least open up the orifice and get a bit more paint on. As I say, I could probably thin it a little bit more, but hey ho, we're practicing, aren't we? We're still on full throttle of the airflow. I'll just give it a bit of a practice here because the needle might stick. Remember, HVLP, part pull your needle back, you've got air coming through it. That can dust off your surface. Once you engage the needle, paint comes through like that. Now I'm just opening out, getting a lot more paint on. I might just dial the, just alter the fan pattern. Happy with that. And as I say, no mask, I'm going to hold my breath and we're going to see how we can spray this. I'm going to go down the side first and back up. Don't hold it too close, you only want to be about 6 inches away. Down and back up. I'm going to move the air cap round, so I'm going to spray on the different angle. I'm going to go across the top. And while I'm there, I'm going to go across the bottom and work my way up the sides. If you see anything, just blast them in. That looks a very wet finish. It also looks a little bit pimply. Gonna put that down. Gonna take it outside now and see what it's like drying off. Right, my lovelies, I'm going to say to you, I'm doing this testing for you, and clearly I pick up on a few things as I'm doing these tests to give you the tips and the tricks of the trade. Now, that's had a mist waft coat and it's had 2 coats over the top. I'll bring it in and show you in a minute, but I did say to you, trial and error. Thin the paint more if required. Now, I'd got about a 10% mix on that paint in there. And I will say, hand on heart, it's not my finest hour. It's not my finest hour at all of spraying. That said, I've done it. We can actually see there's a little bit of a texture to it. I'm going to lift it up if I can. There's a little bit of a, I've not done that bottom edge clearly. There's a bit of a texture to that surface that I'm not really happy about. I would say to you, I would need to thin that a little bit more to get it flowing out better. It does dry quite quickly in that 10 to 15 minutes, and outside it's probably dried quicker than I'd really want it to dry to allow it to flow out. But I would say the 1.8 needle, nearly dropping it. The 1.8 needle tip is ideal, but I need to thin that paint a little bit more to get more of a wet paint onto that surface. It is a little bit textured. It's not as good as some of the other paints that I've tried that do flow out quite nicely using a thinner, i.e. thinner paint, smaller spray tip. That is a little bit thick on the surface, and that comes down to, let's call it user error, and not actually thinning the paint enough. So I would say thin the paint more, practice, try it before you go hell for leather on somebody's outside or your own front door. But that has covered nicely for 2 over that mist coat. So no problem there. It feels nice. It's a good satin finish. I'll put that down. It's a nice, good satin finish. It feels solid. What I'm just not happy about is that little bit of a texture to it, which I would lose next time round when I did another window, thinning the paint more. So that said, am I saying it's not a bad paint? I'm saying it's not a bad paint. Give it a go. There's a link in the Amazon description below to it if you want to check out the other colours. But where I am impressed is that 2 coats brushed using a cheap brush from Aldi. That, can we get it with the light? That is a lovely, yeah, let's get it. That is a lovely satin finish, brushed straight out the tin, not thinned. And you know what? That's not bad at all. Still a little bit soft to get my nail against it, but as I said earlier, how many times do you want to be going around with a nail checking to see whether it's adhered or not? That will have stuck, but I don't want to force it to try and scratch it off. I'm going to just take the tape edges off there and there, best I can. Look at that. I will say, if you're looking at just doing painting of a door over a weekend with a simple brush, I'm going to say to you, give that a go, because I'm really impressed with how that's brushed. Me being a professional, I'd like to be spraying it, and clearly not got that totally right over this time. But the brushing, 2 coats straight out the tin, that is getting big thumbs up. Litre tin about £30. It's virtually next day delivery with Amazon. That is fantastic, really impressed. Again, if you're looking at wanting to paint your front door, that is probably white or a colour that you don't like, check this paint out. It's actually gone on really well. And on that note, I'm going to say, let's wind it up now. I've explained about cleaning down. I've explained about application of paint. That is brilliant. But on this instance, I need to thin the paint a little bit more. It's gone on great, but it's not the best finish I'd have actually expected for me to produce. But saying that, we're not bad at all. Next time you try it or I try it, thin it down a bit more, practice with it. It looks fine on my test board there, but it's not come out so good actually on the uPVC. It needed thinning. Just want to mention, cleaning this out, dead easy. Tip the paint out that's still in there, wipe the centre suction pipe down with a bit of cloth, put so much cellulose thinners in it, shake it all up and flush the pipe, the needle out with cellulose thinners. Do it for 2 or 3 times. That will clean all of that in there. Once you've got the cellulose thinners going around the pot, you can put your hand in and wipe the last residue of paint that's in there, flush it through with more cellulose thinners, strip the needle out the back, wipe it all down, reassemble it. Remember, put a little bit of Vaseline on your working parts, your threads and your needle. Job's a good one. Dead easy to clean out. I expect that to be cleaned out in 10 minutes because literally I'm disconnecting it off the hose and flushing cleaner through it, and the cleaner is cellulose thinners, not white spirit. Watch the videos at the end.